Hold on tight for the next hour. You're entering into a place, a zone called the alternative to the alternative media. It's a place, a special place where even truth seekers fear to tread.
All right, people, let's move like we've got a purpose.
Affirmative.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to the Investigative Journal on this Friday. Greg Anthony here. A weekend coming up without rain. Wow. But you know something? I live in an area that's a semi-desert area. And I was astounded today to look out and see green mountains. It reminded me, I thought I was in Tennessee or something. So there is a good side to the rain. In the background, you will hear my latest service dog, who I had to put a collar on, one of those that protects him because of a cut he has. He's going to be screaming throughout the whole show. And he's behind a wall. Yes, I had to put up a wall to protect him from my other service dogs because he's new and you have to keep him separated for 6 weeks because of, well, they tell me that we have to make sure that he doesn't spread any other problems to my dogs, my other service dogs. So I built a wall, and it's really protecting both my dogs and him from problems. So that brings us to the question of, who else in America, you're like me, that's all you think about now, because that's all you hear, is build the wall or don't build the wall. This has been around for how many centuries have people been building walls to protect themselves? And now we got this big debate. It's a ruse. Let's be honest. This is just to distract you from World War III that's going to begin in Venezuela soon. Did you hear about the Russian bombers? Nuclear bombers are now moving into Venezuela. What are they planning? They have a nice little problem going on, and the Jesuits who created this problem, and I bet you that Father Jesuit General Sosa, who's from Venezuela, had a lot to do with it. And this whole idea of a wall is kind of stupid because the walls do help. But in a case, I'm going to make a case here, in a case of America, it's not going to help because we have a Congress that doesn't really deal with immigration. This is not something that just happened in the Trump administration. This happened years ago. They've allowed immigrants to come in here willy-nilly without any questions because of many different reasons. One, farm workers are very cheap, so many farmers, big corporate farms want to have, cheap labor. We have people starving in Central America due to different factions of socialist parties and democratic parties always getting into these rebel wars that are funded by the United States, by the Vatican. It's a way to destabilize a continent. So this is nothing new. What's happening is the final step to turn America into a socialist country is underway. And so now this border issue, this wall issue, has come to the forefront. But let's look at it practically for a minute. Okay, we live in this world created by the Vatican Jesuit New World Order and all of their minions in Congress, who I'll tell you don't do a damn thing. Look at what they do. This issue could have been solved so easily if they really wanted to protect the American people years ago. You can't come up with a border situation that's all the laws that we have stimulate illegal immigration, help illegal immigration. And I could recite them, and I will in this show, to give you an idea how simple it would be to correct. And, of course, a wall is needed in certain areas. Now, we're going to give some examples today about the wall in Israel and other places that you may not know. And one of the problems with the wall in America is that we're not surrounded by a desert. So it makes it a little difficult to build a wall from sea to shining sea, which can't be done. But barriers can be put up to areas where it would make it very difficult to climb a big mountain, right? And then we would have to use natural barriers to suffice for a man-made wall. It can be done. So we can make it more difficult. But unless we spend a lot more money on border security, and I'm not talking about drones and things like that, but actual manpower, like Israel does, the wall will be ineffective. So it's a two-pronged thing in my estimation. First, you got to have a barrier. Because right now, if I didn't have a barrier between my one service dog, who's a puppy, and these other dogs, we would have a huge problem. So I put up a barrier. The next thing I do is I guard that barrier. What do I mean by guarding it? I'm out there looking and keeping this small little barrier guarded so that nothing gets in or out. Same with a border wall. But at present time, with the numbers of agents we have, Border Patrol agents, it will never help. We need to really look at what Israel did as far as how they had to step up manpower and the border wall to make it secure. And primarily what we're trying to do is to eliminate people crossing in areas that are dangerous and then getting into this country, because once they get in, it's hard to get them out. As in other countries, it would be simple. Our country, our laws have made it very, very easy for coyotes to say to these people, look, once we get in America, they can't get you out because the laws will favor you. And it's true. Because I don't know if you know this, but for example, if you enter this country and you seek asylum, whether, asylum, folks, first of all, isn't because you're poor or you want a job. Asylum is because you've been politically put to a test where your political views cause you to be in danger of your life. Asylum people are going to have a hard time proving that. They can prove they need to have a job, but that's why we have over 900,000 asylum cases backlogged. And what we do in America is the famous catch and release, like you do when you go fishing. You catch a fish, and you put him back in the ocean. What's the chances of you ever catching that fish again? Nil. And that's exactly what happens to 9 out of 10 of these asylum seekers. They're told they'll have a court date in 2 years because they're backlogged. And then you never catch the fish again. And he's free to roam around America as he chooses. Now, the problem is that this one country like ours cannot immigrate the whole world. So the laws need to be strict. And that doesn't mean that we can't have a country that's a diverse country like ours. But how diverse are certain places in America now? The minority is a white, not a Hispanic. So what we're doing, we'll see the Vatican and the Jesuit idea here is to repopulate America, to turn it into a socialist country, and to basically eliminate the prosperity that America has grown through. The last 100 years since the Industrial Revolution, they want to punish you for being successful, and you're going to pay an indulgence, and that is all of these new democratic policies of socialism are basically that. You are being punished for success, and you will pay the indulgence of a socialist country, and that means that you will have no say in anything you do. You won't have a doctor. You will be told what to eat. You will be told where to live. And you'll be told that you can only travel in certain days and certain means. You won't have a car. That's all it is. It's a punishment and an indulgence that you're going to pay to them because of what you've done, because of what a country's done. And so that's their goal. And so one way they can do this is by illegal immigration, reformat a country. What do you think they're doing in Europe? The great example is a country called Hungary. I don't know if you're aware of Hungary, but they've taken a stance against this. And I'm sure the Pope and the Jesuits are a bit upset. But in that small little country, they've decided to have a very tough immigration program and also to allow their citizens to repopulate themselves. They're not looking to repopulate a country with non-Hungarians. They're looking to repopulate it with Hungarians and make it easier for them to have babies and children. And so they're offering such incentives that they realize to save their country, it starts there. But what's happening here? Just the opposite. We're passing laws like allowing abortion even when the baby is born, as we've seen before. And the immigration laws, even this last bill that just passed, and Trump has now declared a national emergency, which he should declare a national emergency if you want to save this country at all. But you know this is only a ruse because he's a puppet as well. But the point is, we're forgetting today that we live in this bizarre world, this bozo world they created. And we're pretending that we're going to have to try to solve these problems and how you would do it. So, first of all, this new bill that they passed really gave him just a token amount of money to start the wall. And secondly, there's some landmines in there that make immigration even more attractive. For example, one provision in that bill is that if there's a minor, and there's thousands and thousands of unescorted minors here, they're allowing anybody who wants to be the sponsor to be protected from being thrown out of the country. That means you don't have to be a father or mother. You can be, they don't even know who these people are, so they're allowing people now to sponsor and stay in our country. Secondly, before Trump can build his wall, he's got to get approval in certain areas from the mayors, and these are areas of most that are needed the most, so they're blocking him there. So you're seeing what Congress has done, and this is Republicans too. And if you don't believe that they work on the same team, the Republicans had the House, the Senate, and the presidency for 2 years, and they didn't do jack shit. So that should tell you, Mr. Paul Ryan, that you're a Vaticanite and you work right for them, right with this policy of open immigration in the world. And you bet that's the Vatican policy. We can go back to 2000, and I will in either this show or the Monday show, and show you what John Paul II was saying about immigration. And just ask your friends over in Europe what they're doing to Italy, to France, to Switzerland, or not Switzerland, to Sweden, to other countries. They're changing the face of those countries by bringing in immigrants. And guess what? For every one that comes in, the Vatican makes money on this, along with the EU. So don't think this hasn't, if we haven't learned our lesson by just looking over to Europe, then we know there is basically a plan, a worldwide plan, to create this one world government, one world religion that nobody in the media here will talk about, because if you talk the truth about who's behind this, you're considered a racist or a Catholic basher or whatever, and it's not true. What they're doing is basically, right before your very eyes, destroying your country. And they're doing it methodically. And to bring it to the forefront, they had to have a guy like Trump there. And basically, he represents what is left of America, although he's on their side. It's you people, you people here, you middle-class people, who are watching your country get eroded from both coasts. And it's going to start spreading inward. Because you know as well as I do, the middle class our population of the Midwest, the morals, the values, the differences are immense. I came from the Midwest. I know. You go to California, and it's like a different world. And what's happening in California is a travesty. And I have friends in the Midwest who go, "You live with those crazy people out there?" And that's basically what it is. Because this whole border idea is so ridiculous, because you need to have a strong immigration system. And if Congress hasn't done it now, they never will do it. And this is evidenced by what they just did. with this bill that does nothing. It even enhances illegal immigration. So you have no choice but to look at this and say, if they don't do this, this, and this, then you better believe that there's something more behind it than just two parties. You have a Democratic Party now that talks like a communist socialist. I mean, they're ridiculous. They're fighting this tooth and nail. Now, the latest on the Trump emergency, national emergency, this is something that's been given by Congress in the 70s to deal with things like this. And now since there's been over, 50 to 60 to 70 national emergencies that don't compare to this. Don't compare to the drug trafficking, to the human trafficking that happens with a porous border. And the Democrats are fighting tooth and nail. And I heard one say today, somebody who supports Trump's wall or national emergency said, well, Obama passed 12 of those, or 7 or 8 or 12. Clinton 10. Bush. And they said, yes, but Obama had a reason. It was the swine flu. Did you realize how crazy that is? Trump is looking at this, and I'm not saying Trump's not on their team. I'm saying you people that support him. You realize it isn't. Look at this emergency. It is an emergency. I don't know if any of you are in Tijuana, ever been to Tijuana. I have. I was just there 3 days ago. And let me tell you something. If anybody should file an emergency, it's this mayor of Tijuana. Because these migrants that are trying to get into America have been stopped there, and the living conditions are terrible. And then they complain. I know that Chula Vista, which is right on the border in San Diego, was complaining because of the sewerage coming from Tijuana. Well, let me tell you something. It ain't going to get any better because we got another 2 or 3 caravans of about 20,000 people headed here to this part of the world, separated by a border wall. And if it wasn't there, they'd be right in Chula Vista in San Diego. Then what were people going to do? But let the problem be in Mexico, right? Then you get a guy, another Democrat who's going to run for president from Texas, by the way. I mean, this guy, he says today he wants to rip down every wall. All right, rip down the wall by San Ysidro. And you see what it's going to happen. You idiot. I mean, it's crazy. Walls do work, but they will not work under our present immigration system unless we take the first step of tripling to quadrupling our border security. Because what happens now, you go to an isolated area in New Mexico. I know a couple of them because I used to live out that way. I used to walk across the border in 1990, going into a place called Las Palomas, Mexico, when I lived out in New Mexico. And there was nobody there. I was going back and forth. I didn't need a passport. And I'm in Mexico, and I'm sure, and I was watching. I mean, what happens now, let's say you get 2 Border Patrol agents in that area, and they've got to take people to a confinement area. Who's watching the border then? Nobody. So they send a few people they send people that they know they're going to get caught. And then when the Border Patrol agents are occupied, 100 people cross. So it's a serious problem. And it's not a question of a humanitarian hatred for immigrants. It's a question of protecting countries on both sides of the border. Because what's happening now is the illegal drug trafficking that, I might add, is being enhanced now by our government. And one reason is because they're a part of it. Don't think the government and certain people in it, I shouldn't say, government, I should say certain people in the government aren't profiting from El Chapo's billions. And don't think that just the mafia people are supporting it. And don't think the Vatican's not getting their cut when all this money has to be laundered. Where do you think they go? One is the Vatican Bank, and they're making, 10 to 15% on all that illegal money. So don't think these people aren't prospering by the drug trade. The only people that aren't are people that are hooked on drugs. We got over, 50 to 60 to 70,000 people die from drugs? Just 1 year? The Vietnam War was what, in the 50,000. So, I mean, this is a crisis. But they're not doing anything to really stop it. It's just a lot of talk. And I think it's important to look at it from 2 points of view. And we're going to start with the walls of separation and the walls that are around the world that are doing a good job, and some of the facts that we may not know, that you never hear. And I want to do that in the second half hour, but I could spend another show, and I will have to next week, so you clearly understand the Vatican's position on this. And you'll see that they look at it from they basically state this world should be wide open. There should not, if you want to go here, there, everywhere, we have to take care of the poor. I said this a long time ago. They are so full of shit that I can't even talk about it sometimes because they're the wealthiest organization in the world. And they want me to take care of the poor. They want you to take care of the poor. And I say, well, open up your pocketbook, Pope. You're the richest organization in the world, and the money you give to them, let me give you an example. A guy comes into a place I'm having coffee today, and I gave him $1 out of all the money I have. And that is a greater percentage than the Vatican would ever give with the money they had, because they could end poverty if they didn't create divisiveness. And they didn't profit from this because it's an evil organization, along with the minions in your government that are in Congress, that are in the White House, that are in every other country that matter in this world. And they're all working for the same goal, whether they outwardly fight or not. And while we're sleeping here, and while others are concentrating just on this border immigration problem, we got World War III just about to break out in Venezuela. And if you don't think so, think again, because it's really close to the border. It's really close to us. We know their goals, and it's really strange that this happened to a country like Venezuela, because if you understood what it was like 20 years ago when it was the most prosperous country in the world, they pinpointed it. And then we got the Jesuit general now, just in 2016. We know how evil that man is, whoever holds that office. He's from Venezuela. So, man, you better worry. I can't put all the facts together. But I'll tell you what. You go from one country to another. Where's the powder keg? Where is the match going to be lit to ignite this problem that is really going to push this New World Order? What do you think you got these new congressmen in there? One a Muslim professing Sharia law in the halls of Congress. What do you have another one professing socialism? These are plants. This is getting you ready so that when what hits the fan and there aren't that many people left, everybody will be involved and they'll come up and say, now we're going to protect you. Get smart, people. Today we're dealing with trying to solve this problem, even though we know we can't. And we're not living in their bozo world, and we're looking at it from a solution point of view, and the solution basically is to understand where the enemy is. Secondly, if you want to deal with the wall, we can solve it in one day. If you start looking at some of the research on what's been done, and then when you have to look at the Vatican's position and why our governments are following that. Because they're connected at the hip. Where do you think politicians go? They run for the people with the most money. Who has the most money in the world? That organization, the Vatican Jesuit organization, has it. And I put Jesuit in there because now they got the white pope and the black pope. And if you don't know much about it, read. Back in 3 minutes on the Investigative Journal.
The book of Revelation says, the spirit of prophecy is the testimony of Jesus Christ. This is at the very heart of FirstAmendmentRadio.com. In that spirit, we have created the Prophecy Reality News app for all of your mobile devices, streaming First Amendment Radio 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Available for your Apple, Android device, and smartphone, absolutely free. Get the Prophecy Reality News app installed today so you can listen to First Amendment Radio wherever you are. The Prophecy Reality News app. Get it now.
Visit crosstheborder.org, C-R-O-S-S, crosstheborder.org, to get your print, EPUB, or PDF version of Nicholas Arthur's new book titled When the Third Temple is Built. That's crosstheborder.org. When it comes to prophecy today, much of the evangelical Christian world has their eyes on Israel, waiting and watching to see when the third temple will begin to be built. The plans are drawn. The Jewish people are eager. Most evangelical Christians today believe that the rapture will happen before the third temple is built. Hi, I'm Michael Eugene. I was taught that Daniel's 70th week was in the future. Is that really what the Bible teaches? Have we searched the scriptures and found this to be true? Why is it so important for a re-established Israel to build a third temple in Jerusalem? Is it necessary to build a temple on the same location already occupied by the Dome of the Rock? Is it necessary for sacrifices to take place in the temple on Temple Mount? Is there really a rapture followed by 7 years of tribulation? What is the New Testament temple? Can we identify history and prophecy? Who is the first beast in Revelation chapter 13? Who are the 7 kings in Revelation 17? I have asked all these questions, and I have found Nicholas Arthur's new book, When the Third Temple is Built, answers all these questions and more using Scripture to interpret Scripture. The Bible says that no prophecy of Scripture is of any private interpretation. Nicholas shows us in his new book, When the Third Temple is Built, how the Bible interprets prophecy and not man's private interpretation. Visit crosstheborder.org, C-R-O-S-S, crosstheborder.org, to get your print, EPUB, or PDF version of Nicholas Arthur's new book titled When the Third Temple is Built. That's crosstheborder.org.
The following program is labeled dangerous and off limits by the supreme Jesuit command. But stand tall, people. Listen up, and you may just learn something.
Oh, dear Lord Jesus, this ain't happening, man. This can't be happening, man. This isn't happening.
Okay, back for the second half hour, the Investigative Journal. We're talking about walls. Why? I wonder why we're doing that. Nobody's talking about that in America, right? Well, just to set the record straight, Trump declared a national emergency today. He's going to divert funds from other areas of the government and try to erect his wall and to spend more money on border security. And sure, barriers work, but we need more than that. We need to, one, provide more border agents to actually do the work and to basically allow people into the country, but legally. Is that asking too much? Secondly, what we need to do is shore up our immigration laws, and we can do that in about 3 or 4. Well, I think we could do it if we had really people that weren't working for the Vatican-led New World Order. We could probably do it in a week. And it isn't that difficult. If you just do not want to increase illegal immigration while at the same time saying you're trying to stop it. And that's exactly what Congress is doing. Paul Ryan is a good example of working for the Vatican-led New World Order. When he was a Speaker of their House for 2 years, this could have been accomplished because Republicans did have authority to do that. Now they don't, and it's that same old play the Hegelian dialectic game in Congress now, which only ends up with a lot of chatter one way or the other. And so, since we're talking about walls, let's look at what some researchers have found out about them. That could be a good place to start, because most people, and really, looking at it from a practical point of view, it's not hard to say, put up a wall, things are protected. Okay. But do you remember in 1989, the Socialist Unity Party, the communist leaders of the East German state, announced the citizens of East Berlin were free to cross the border. They had to tear the wall down. Remember Reagan said, tear down this wall, Mr. Gorbachev? So if walls didn't work, why the hell did they have to build one to keep those people? It worked. And when they tore it down, the people came over, right? Now, to many observers, this action, what did it symbolize, though? It symbolized a new period of globalization, I think, migration, and an interconnection of nations. The world could now be united in peace, right? That was the craziest thing to think. Because when they tell you it's going to be united in peace, it's going to mean war. But in reality, more walls have gone up since that event than ever before. So where was the peace? We know that the Jesuits created communism. They were involved with Stalin. They basically fomented the war against the Tsar, etc., etc. All covered up by history. And you know what? I think they should take every historian at Harvard and all these places that put out this bullshit and just demote them. You know, put them out in the fields instead of the migrant workers for a while and see then if they'd start telling the truth. But since the fall of this Berlin Wall, let's look at that. A number of border walls between nations has been that's more than quadrupled. You can bet that America spent a lot of money on building walls in other countries, but when it comes to ours, it's immoral. According to Elizabeth Vallée, a researcher at Quebec, why do all these people come that really want to get at the truth come from other countries? Because Americans don't. They're too busy, you know, their attention span, even our historians' attention spans are quite small these days. There are more than 65 walls currently standing or under construction. Yep. Unlike the Berlin Wall, okay, which was meant to keep people in, says my puppy dog here. Maybe she's escaping the wall. Oh boy, I don't know about you, but after I finish this show, I'm going to go have dinner. I'm going to have a hamburger. Oh, I can't. One of the new presidential nominees who wants to run for president, Cory Booker, some stupid senator from New Jersey, wants to get rid of cows. Says, no, the world can't function anymore if you eat meat. Because, you know, he decided to be a vegetarian 2 years ago. Now he wants everybody else to, and he's going to tell me how to eat. Well, I'm going to have a hamburger right after this show and enjoy it. So, we're talking about these walls. So this researcher from Quebec found out there's more than 65 walls currently standing or under construction, but unlike the Berlin Wall, which was meant to keep people in, most of these walls were built to keep people out. Right? Right. By deterring illegal immigration, stopping the flow of contraband, or protecting citizens from crimes. Now, other countries are doing this, and you bet America's paid for it. While many were shocked by the U.S. plans by Trump to build a border wall, a wall is by no means uncommon among both developing and developed nations. Countries such as Hungary, like I mentioned, Britain, Bulgaria, Norway, Turkey, and Myanmar, not to mention Israel, have all built walls on their borders, raising the questions, would a wall along the U.S.-Mexico border be successful? Now, we know that a wall is instrumental in stopping it and thwarting drug cartels. Of course, makes it harder, makes them, dig a tunnel, which sometimes if you build a wall right, you can maybe stop that as well, at least cut it down, make it more difficult. But you have to look at what Israel's done, Egypt, Spain, and they erected these for the same purposes that we're hearing now U.S. and Mexico border wall could be effective. We're hearing the same thing. They talked about the same thing, but not at such a high price tag. Oh, we paid for it. You bet our money that we spend in foreign aid went to build some of these. But while Israel's border, you have to understand this. You hear Trump and everybody else talk about Israel. But it's along the Gaza Strip, and its southern border wall, which was constructed to stop the flow of African immigrants from places like Sudan, has been relatively ignored by the media. Now, how much did that cost? Construction on the wall began in 2010 and finished in 2013, costing the U.S. We spent $400 million for the relatively small 150-mile wall. Okay. The U.S.-Mexico border wall, for comparison, would be, well, they say 1,300 miles long, but you can't build it in certain areas. So it's not going to be, look, we got smart people in this country, and I'm sure we could figure out how to do this. I mean, we've built buildings that are much more difficult to construct than a simple wall, so we don't need 1,300 miles. But we could help our citizens, protect them from illegal drug trafficking, protect them from, human trafficking, and also present a more organized system, right? The wall, which is more like a barrier now, we can call it that, is made of steel and barbed wire and stands surrounding the unending hill. We're talking about the one in Israel, standing by those desert hills, so it's pretty easy to build. The site is broken only by the occasional guard tower just above the wall. Now, Netanyahu, the prime minister, praised Trump and this movement now as a great idea, great success, claiming on Twitter that his own wall has stopped most all illegal immigration. While Israel's wall has definitely not stopped everything, it has really assisted in cutting it down dramatically. So we know they work. Now, according to statistics published by Israel, the Ministry of Interior, 17,000 African immigrants entered the state illegally in 2011. However, in 2013, after the completion of the wall, the number fell to 43. That seems to me to help. No matter what the Democratic Party says, and no matter what the Pope says, see, they use both the Pope, the Jesuits, and the Democratic Party to come up with secular and spiritual reasons. The Vatican will tell you that it's immoral because, we should never turn away a poor person. Okay? Now, how does that make you feel? Well, makes Nancy Pelosi use the word immoral. Where do you think she got it from? When is a moral? They're paying for walls for other countries. That's okay. And they've actually built walls before under Obama and these other presidents, and it wasn't immoral. But now it's immoral because it's going to be this connection between church and state that are going to get this new world order right here. Well, why there's a clear-cut correlation between construction of a wall and the decrease in immigration, you have to say, though, that this border wall has only partially contributed to the decrease, and that other measures enacted, see, we look into Israel, by Israel, that we've paid for most likely, parts of it. They took other actions that we should take. Well, did you know that that new, what's her name? She's a congresswoman from Minnesota. She's a Sharia law Muslim. Started to really do some, talk these anti-Semitic terms on Twitter and other places, and she was told to stop, and she gave some half-hearted apology, but the Democrats didn't do anything. If some Republican would have came up with a white supremacist statement, he would have been barred from all committee appointments, which he was. But she's not. She's on the Foreign Relations Committee, berating some guy the other day for our actions in Iran. Now, listen, you got to get her out of there. It's that simple. There's no room for Sharia law in this country. I don't care if you're a Muslim or if you're an atheist or if you're a Catholic. There is no room for it because it's contrary to everything that is humanitarian. And you go tell the Vatican that and see what they say. We're going to take to the Supreme Court a person who owns a bakery and a Christian who owns a bakery and refuses to build or to bake a wedding cake for a homosexual couple. But then at the same time, you ain't going to do that to a Muslim baker, are you? Sharia law Muslim baker? What did they do to ask her in her mosque if they're going to let that homosexual couple get married there. And why don't we call them on that? Or why don't we call, our representatives to look into the problem of all these, we don't even talk about it anymore, of all these terrorist groups that have been given property and they're functioning legally in kind of, cordoned off zones. One's upstate New York of 30 to 40 acres where they're actually walking with weapons going death to America, but that's okay. Why don't we get rid of Fethullah Gulen? He's a guy that we brought here in the 90s with Clinton. He lives up in the Pocono Mountains. He's a Sharia law minister, supposedly, or imam, or whatever, imam, or whatever. And they say he's a moderate Muslim. He's not. He's not a moderate. And we allow him here because we want to, the people in power are destroying this country. If not, Trump would have got rid of Gulen a long time ago. That's why he's on their team. And look into Fethullah Gulen. Done many shows on it. I knew about him years ago when I was in Italy and what he was doing in Europe. He's doing it here now. And he was brought here by the Clintons. Why aren't the Clintons in jail? Because they're right together with Trump and the rest of these boys. Trump is just getting paid now to take the heat. Now, for example, so Israel builds this wall, right? And it decreases immigration, but that's not the only reason. And so that's why I'm telling you, you have to do more here. And the Democrats won't go for any of it. You bet they won't. We got people in the Democratic Party saying they want to abolish border, ICE and all these things. Rather than merely focusing on the border, Israel also made it less desirable for immigrants to make it across the wall to stay and work. Okay? Oh, that's, not hard to do here. For example, Israel's passed 2 laws targeting immigrants. One prohibiting immigrants from transferring money out of the country, and another forcing employers to deposit 20% of an immigrant's employee's salary into a bank account, which can only be withdrawn upon exit of the country. Okay? So what they're doing is saying, okay, you can stay, but we got your money here, and then you can go. Laws such as these have made it harder for immigrants to send money back to their families, an issue we don't even deal with here. So, you get people coming here working, all the money leaving. Now, Israel's been successful with the wall. The question, and another thing they did, they tightened up their immigration laws, plus they increased the number of border agents tremendously to make sure that the wall is effective. Now, the question is, would it be successful here? Could it achieve its goal? While the wall could be successful, there's more obstacles that we would face in the United States. The border wall surrounded in Israel is by a desert. Just natural things. The U.S. wall would vary. The desert provides a natural barrier to immigration, as shown by the fact that most immigration to Israel only occurred on days when the weather was optimal for desert crossing, so that helped. In addition, human smugglers in Mexico have proven themselves capable at bypassing exiting barriers along the U.S. border. So we got problems with the barriers we have. They have to be fortified, often using power tools to cut through and infiltrate the U.S. existing fence. So a fence ain't going to work. It's kind of like my little puppy out there that I'm not doing it as a disciplinary measure. I'm just doing it as a medicinal measure here to protect other dogs. But if I made it easy for her to get out, she'd just break through. So I'm sure we could think of something. This would not be a problem if the U.S.-Mexico wall were as small as Israel, and it would make it easier to patrol and respond to security. Okay, so it's easier there. But the proposed wall here would be almost, well, they're talking about from sea to shining sea, so it's going to be bigger. Let's just say that. We got to start looking at policies. I want to see more facts. Okay, if you're going to put this up, how the hell are you going to put it up? Don't just give me this, I'm a builder, I can build a wall. This is more of a strategic wall that has to be thought about. And if Israel can do it for 400 million in those areas, maybe we can, and for that 150 miles, do the same. I would imagine there's a lot of desert on our, that's around our borders as well. So my point is I think only if we increase the size of our border patrol and draft immigration policies similar to those adopted by Israel, could the border wall even work? So now Trump has talked that, and Americans want that, but he's up against a Congress that even on his side, even on the American people's side, let's say Trump is just there as a pawn for the New World Order. We have American people who would like to see the same thing done. Strong wall, strong immigration policies, and more Border Patrol agents. Why isn't that getting done? We got representatives of the people going to Washington. Well, they're more in bed with basically the Vatican-led New World Order. Then we have all the minions that work for them paying these guys off. Yeah, let's just call it the way it is. And so it's never going to get done because that's what the policy is behind closed doors. Make it look like we're going to do something, but don't do it. The cost is going to be great. And I don't think the trade-off, I think basically it's worth what we pay to create a more organized system, cut down on what we know are illegal drugs and illegal human trafficking. But as I said, under the present condition, living in this bizarro world that they've created, it's never going to get done. So all you're hearing is a lot of yelling and arguing, and your minds and my mind is, absorbed in this, especially if you live in a border state where you see it more. But you know what? Pretty soon, it's kind of like you see what's happening. They're getting you ready for something. That's, we've talked for years about this socialist move, what they will do, but now you're seeing it kind of come out in the mainstream even. And one of my biggest regrets is when you even go to this internet, it's all controlled as well. And the real idea that we're talking about here is very simple. Every country has a right as a sovereign nation to protect itself. That's what the initial federal government was established for. Now, the Constitution's a great document. A great document. But that great document has only been there for show. Because let's look at it really quickly here in the last few minutes, and I'll sum this up. You look at the Second Amendment that says you have a right to bear arms. What's really happening? They're taking away that right. Okay, let's look at freedom of religion. What's going to happen? Oh, everybody's here free, but who's really taking over? You look at the Vatican-led New World Order and the Jesuits. They are going to make it so that you can't worship. Okay? And if they won't do it overtly, they'll do it covertly like they're doing now with their phony ecumenical movement. So that's not there. And then slowly but surely, you're seeing it in our government. For example, you're hearing the FBI now stating that they wanted to get rid of Trump by using the 25th Amendment. Well, you can't use it. Because the 26th Amendment, because that was formed under Woodrow Wilson when he had a stroke and his wife took over. So they said if the president's incapacitated either physically or mentally, then you can use it. You can't use it because you disagree with him, or even if he committed the heinous crimes that they're talking about, which he hasn't yet, or hasn't. Even if he was a traitor, treason, you can't use the 26th Amendment. You got to use the impeachment powers then. That's what it's all about. But now you're hearing people talk, these supposed, people that understand the Constitution, but they're not following it. You're seeing our FBI not following it in the public stage. You're seeing it really out front with Hillary Clinton. They're showing you basically that there is no rule of law in this country. Get used to it. Because when they take over socialism and fascism, that's what they're doing now. They're showing you bits and pieces of it. It's kind of like a trailer before the movie really starts, right? That's what you're getting. And if you're not smart, and you're not going to research the Vatican-led New World Order, you're going to be left in the cold because you're going to even leave this place we call Earth, which is flat, not round, not knowing what the hell happened to you. And if we can't change it, at least we can understand it. And then understand that the people that are talking to you, both on the mainstream news and on the internet, are, I'm going to say it right out, full of shit. There's no better way to put it. And get smart. At least this weekend, look into this. Look into the Vatican-led New World Order. Don't be left behind. And I'm telling you something, it's not going to be pretty what's going to come. Back in Monday, have a good weekend. Spend some time researching this. See you Monday. Back on the Investigative Journal.
The book of Revelation says, the spirit of prophecy is the testimony of Jesus Christ. This is at the very heart of FirstAmendmentRadio.com. In that spirit, we have created the Prophecy Reality News app for all of your mobile devices, streaming First Amendment Radio 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Available for your Apple, Android device, and smartphone, absolutely free. Get the Prophecy Reality News app installed today so you can listen to First Amendment Radio wherever you are. The Prophecy.
Since the beginning of time, kings have sought it, nations have fought for it. It has been traded, it has been borrowed, it has been purchased, it has been stolen. There's a reason for it. To secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and to our posterity, invest with the security of gold and silver. Call Discount Gold and Silver Trading at 1-800-375-4188 or visit discountgoldandsilvertrading.net. Listen to Financial Survival with your host Melody Cedarstrom right here on FirstAmendmentRadio.com at 4 p.m. Eastern or 1 p.m. Pacific Time. Visit discountgoldandsilvertrading.net or call Discount Gold and Silver Trading at 1-800-375-4188. Toll free 1-800-375-4188.